Have you ever felt pressured by the expectations of being a leader, or by the need to make the right choices at critical moments in your life? The story of Solomon, the wise king of Israel, resonates deeply with many of us. From his birth, he was marked by great promise and a legacy that carried not only glory, but also challenges and pain. Solomon began his journey surrounded by the shadow of his father, David, struggling to prove himself worthy of the throne. As we face our own struggles and uncertainties, Solomon's story teaches us that no matter how difficult the journey, we can always seek wisdom and divine guidance. He shows us that true wealth lies not in material possessions alone, but in the deep understanding of life and the relationships we cultivate. Join me as we explore Solomon's fascinating life, his choices, his failures, and the eternal search for wisdom that can illuminate our path. Before we dive into Solomon's captivating story, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. By subscribing, you'll not only be exposed to inspiring stories, but you'll also discover valuable lessons that can illuminate your path in life. So, hit that subscribe button and join us as we explore this wise king's incredible choices, failures, and never-ending quest for wisdom. Are you ready? The birth of Solomon, the promised heir. In the days of King David's glory, a new hope was born in Jerusalem. After the painful loss of his first son with Bathsheba, the result of a mistake that caused great suffering to the king, God, in his infinite mercy, promised a new beginning. This time, Bathsheba was pregnant again, and the expectation in the palace was great. Everyone awaited the fulfillment of God's promise. When Solomon was born, he was not just another prince coming into the world. He was the promised heir, the one who would bring peace and prosperity to Israel. His name, Solomon, meant peace, and from the beginning, he carried with him the expectation of a great future. Furthermore, God, through the prophet Nathan, gave him the name Jedediah, which means, beloved of God. From the first moment of his life, he was already special in the eyes of God. David, looking at his son, knew that the destiny of Israel would pass through the hands of that baby. Solomon was destined to be more than a prince. He would be the king who would carry out the plans that God himself had drawn up for the people of Israel. And so, in the silence of the palace corridors, began the story of one of the greatest kings the world would ever know. David's choice, Solomon, the future king. As the years passed, David knew that his reign was coming to an end. He had many sons, and the question of who would be the next king was a crucial one. Adonijah, one of his eldest sons, believed that the throne was rightfully his and was already preparing to assume power. But David had other plans, guided by God's will. From the moment Solomon was born, David knew that he was the chosen one. God had revealed that Solomon would be the next king, the promised heir. David, now an elderly man, made the decision to ensure that his youngest son would take the throne. With the support of Bathsheba and the prophet Nathan, David acted quickly. He ordered that Solomon be anointed king while he was still alive, ensuring a peaceful transition of power. In a public ceremony, Solomon was anointed by Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet. Riding on the king's mule, a symbol of his authority, he was led before the people who cheered him with shouts of, "Long live King Solomon!" Adonijah, who had tried to seize the throne, was overcome with fear, but Solomon, showing wisdom and mercy, decided to spare his life. Thus, David could rest in peace, knowing that Solomon, God's promised son, would be the future king of Israel. The request for wisdom, the dream at Gibeon. In the early days of Solomon's reign, he went to Gibeon to offer sacrifices to God, seeking guidance for his new responsibility as king. There he offered 1,000 burnt offerings, demonstrating his devotion and recognizing the importance of depending on God to rule the great people of Israel. That same night, God appeared to Solomon in a dream and made him an astonishing offer: "Ask what I shall give you." Solomon, knowing the weight of his mission, could have asked for wealth, power, or the defeat of his enemies. However, he humbly asked for wisdom. "Give me an understanding heart that I may judge your people with justice." God was pleased with Solomon's request. He not only granted the wisdom the young king asked for, but he also promised riches and honor such as no other king would have. Upon awakening, Solomon returned to Jerusalem, offered more sacrifices to the Lord, and celebrated with all the people. From that moment on, Solomon became the wisest man of all time, and his reign would be remembered for its justice, peace, and prosperity. The request for wisdom, rather than wealth or power, changed the history of Israel and the future of the young king. The trial of the two mothers, divine wisdom revealed. The fame of Solomon's wisdom soon spread throughout Israel, and one incident in particular would highlight his cunning. Two women, both prostitutes, came to the palace with a plea for justice. Each claimed to be the mother of a living baby, while the other accused her of exchanging her child for a dead one. Solomon listened attentively to their stories. The situation was complicated, with no witnesses to support either version. To settle the dispute, he asked for a sword. Everyone fell silent, perplexed by the request. Solomon ordered, "Cut the baby in half and give each half to her." The reaction was immediate. One of the women pleaded, "Please, my lord, give the baby to her. Don't kill him." Her concern and love for the child were evident. The other woman, indifferent, agreed, "Neither for me nor for you, cut him in half." At that moment, Solomon discerned the truth. He declared, "Do not kill the boy. The true mother is the one who prefers to see him alive, even when he is far from her." The king had revealed the depth of his wisdom. Everyone was impressed by his ability to understand human feelings. The story spread throughout the kingdom, and the people saw in Solomon the just and wise king whom God had chosen. Solomon's decision not only resolved the dispute, but also confirmed that under his reign, justice would be upheld. Building the temple, David's dream fulfilled, with the kingdom of Israel established and at peace, King David, in his later years, began to dream of a temple for the Lord. He desired a sacred place where the people could worship God, a space that would symbolize God's presence among them. David gathered architects and craftsmen, planning every detail of the temple, which would be majestic, made of precious stones and cedar wood. However, God revealed to David that he could not build the temple, as he had been a man of war. That task would be left to his son, Solomon. Despite his disappointment, David did not let himself be discouraged. Instead, he decided to prepare everything for construction. He gathered gold, silver, bronze, and other materials, ensuring that Solomon would have everything he needed. David summoned the leaders of Israel and encouraged them to contribute generously to the project. In his farewell, David gave Solomon the plans for the temple and encouraged him, "Be strong and courageous. God will be with you." David's desire was for the temple to be a place of peace and worship. Thus, David's dream would become a reality in Solomon's hands. Construction of the temple would begin, solidifying the legacy of a king who always sought God's presence, and the temple would become an everlasting symbol of faith and worship in Israel. Now that you know the exciting story of the temple's construction, we want to hear your thoughts. What do you think of David's decision to prepare everything for Solomon, even though he was unable to build the temple? How does this reflect the legacy we leave for future generations? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts on how a father's dreams and efforts can impact the lives of his children. We look forward to reading your thoughts. The dedication of the temple, God's glory manifested. Finally, the great day arrived for the dedication of Solomon's temple, the masterpiece that had become the spiritual heart of Israel. With its majestic columns and golden walls, the temple was ready to receive God's presence. People from all the tribes gathered in Jerusalem, bringing offerings and sacrifices in honor of the Lord. On the day of the ceremony, Solomon stood on a platform built for the occasion. With the people before him, he began to pray, "O Lord, God of Israel, there is no God like you, neither in heaven nor on earth." He recognized the importance of the temple as a sacred space where people could seek God. Solomon asked that if the people would turn toward that place in prayer, God would hear and forgive. As soon as the prayer ended, a thick cloud began to fill the temple. It was the glory of God manifesting. The divine presence was so intense that the priests could not continue their ministry and fell to their knees in worship. The people were amazed and recognized that God was there among them. With tears of joy, they all worshipped the Lord, singing hymns of praise. The dedication of the temple was not just the completion of an architectural project, but the beginning of a new chapter in the spiritual life of Israel. The glory of God confirmed that the temple was, in fact, the house of the Lord, a place of worship and encounter with the divine. The visit of the Queen of Sheba, Solomon's fame crosses borders. Solomon's fame spread throughout the East, attracting the attention of the Queen of Sheba, who heard of his extraordinary wisdom and wealth. Curious, she decided to visit Jerusalem, bringing a large caravan with gifts of rare spices, gold, and precious stones. Upon arrival, the queen was received with great honors. She was dazzled by the opulence of the palace and the majesty of Solomon, who was waiting for her, dressed magnificently. Impressed, the queen began to pose riddles and challenging questions, eager to test the king's wisdom. Solomon answered all her questions with clarity and insight, surprising her with his profound knowledge. With each answer, her admiration grew, and she exclaimed that everything she had heard about him was true. As a show of respect, the queen offered her rich gifts. In return, Solomon also gave her gifts worthy of a queen. During her visit, the queen not only learned about the king's wisdom, but also about his faith in God. As she took her leave, the Queen of Sheba left impressed and inspired, taking with her new knowledge and renewed faith. Her visit solidified Solomon's reputation, showing that his wisdom transcended borders and united cultures in search of understanding. The story of their encounter spread, reminding everyone that true wealth lies in the wisdom that comes from God. The expansion of the kingdom, unprecedented wealth and prosperity, under Solomon's reign, Israel prospered as never before. The once struggling kingdom flourished under the king's wise leadership. Solomon established strategic alliances, increasing his power and influence. Trade routes became bustling, bringing in goods such as spices and gold from far away, and making Jerusalem a major trading hub. Solomon's wealth was reflected throughout the nation. He invested in infrastructure, building roads and ports that facilitated trade. Solomon's temple, a symbol of worship, also became a place of beauty and peace. Feasts and celebrations became commonplace, and the people enjoyed a luxurious lifestyle. Solomon was not only concerned with material possessions, he established a fair justice system, promoting equity. His reputation as a just ruler drew the admiration of other kings. He also encouraged the arts, making Jerusalem a center of learning and culture. Recognizing that his wisdom came from God, Solomon sought divine guidance in his decisions. Solomon's era was not only distinguished by wealth and prosperity, but also by the unity of the people under faith and wise leadership, creating a period of peace and abundance that would be remembered as one of the most brilliant in Israel's history. The growth of the royal family, the many wives and concubines. During Solomon's reign, the royal family expanded significantly. Known for his wisdom and wealth, Solomon had over 1,000 wives and concubines, many of whom came from strategic marriage alliances with neighboring nations. These unions were important to ensuring peace and strengthening Israel's power, as each new wife brought a valuable political connection. However, this family expansion did not come without its challenges. With so many women living in different residences, Solomon had to manage the dynamics between them, avoiding jealousy and rivalry. While some wives were loved and respected, others could cause tension in the palace. Additionally, Solomon's wives, many of whom were from foreign cultures, brought their own traditions and beliefs. This affected religious practice in Israel. Although Solomon was initially faithful to the God of Israel, the influence of his pagan wives led him to build temples and altars to foreign gods, which distorted his devotion and created discontent among the people. Thus, the growth of Solomon's royal family illustrates the quest for power and alliances, but also the dangers that arise when one loses focus on true worship and core values. What began as a wise political strategy ended up creating internal conflicts and significant spiritual alienation. If you found it fascinating how the growth of Solomon's royal family had such an impact on the history of Israel, be sure to leave a like. The complexity of alliances and the challenges that arose in family dynamics are proof that even the best intentions can have unexpected consequences. Your support helps us continue to bring you incredible and profound stories from the Bible. So, enjoy this video and join us in exploring more valuable lessons. God's rebuke, the promise of division of the kingdom. After a long reign of glory and prosperity, Solomon began to stray from the true worship of God. In a dream at night, the Lord appeared to him, reminding him of the blessings he had bestowed upon him, such as wisdom and wealth. However, God warned Solomon of the dangers of idolatry, warning him that if he continued to follow other deities, he would divide the kingdom that had been united under David. God's message was clear: disobedience would have serious consequences. Solomon, however, did not take the warning seriously. Nevertheless, he continued to give in to the influence of his many wives, building altars to foreign gods and provoking God's wrath. As a result, God raised up adversaries against Solomon, including Jeroboam, who would become a major figure in the future division of the kingdom. This promise of division served not only as a punishment but also as a call to repentance. God's rebuke illustrates the consequences of straying from true worship. Solomon's once glorious reign began to deteriorate, showing that even the greatest kings can be lost when they fail to remain faithful to God. History teaches us that true prosperity and unity depend on remaining faithful to the Lord. The decline of peace, revolts and external enemies, Solomon's reign, which had been a period of splendor and peace, began to deteriorate because of his disobedience to God. The people, who had previously lived under the king's protection, began to resent the high taxes and forced labor required to maintain his grand projects, such as the temple and the palace. As discontent grew, revolts broke out. Disgruntled workers began to protest, and confidence in Solomon's leadership began to wane. Internally, the unity that had sustained the kingdom was disintegrating. In addition, Solomon faced external threats. Neighboring nations, such as the Philistines, began to rearm, seeing Israel's weakness as an opportunity. Moabites and Edomites also stood ready to reclaim lost territories. The political alliances that Solomon had formed through marriage were turning against him, bringing in foreign cultures and gods that created divisions. Unrest was growing, and the people questioned Solomon's leadership. The once unshakable peace was in jeopardy, reminding us that true security comes from faithfulness to God and care for his people. Solomon's story is a warning about how even the greatest kingdoms can crumble in the face of disobedience and dissatisfaction. The Book of Proverbs, wisdom recorded. Solomon, the wise king of Israel, decided to share the vast wisdom he had acquired throughout his life. He understood that wisdom was a valuable treasure, essential to guide people in their decisions and promote true happiness. So he began compiling the Book of Proverbs, full of short phrases that taught profound lessons about life and morality. These proverbs were like pearls of wisdom, each with a meaning that could be applied to everyday life. Solomon personified wisdom as a woman crying out in the streets, emphasizing that it is available to all who seek it. He said, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom," showing that recognizing God's greatness is fundamental to living with discernment. The Proverbs addressed important topics, such as humility, respect for parents, and choosing companions. Solomon warned, "Bad company corrupts good morals," reminding us that our relationships shape our lives. Using vivid metaphors, he warned of the dangers of recklessness and the importance of hard work. "The lazy man will not roast what he has hunted, but the labor of the diligent brings wealth." This phrase encouraged his subjects to strive. In compiling these proverbs, Solomon knew he was creating a timeless guide that would help generations seek truth and understanding in a confusing world. The Book of Proverbs continues to inspire, showing that wisdom is not just knowledge, but a way of living and making decisions that shape our future. The Book of Ecclesiastes, reflections on life. Solomon, the king of Israel, had it all: wealth, power, and wisdom. However, he began to question the true meaning of life. Thus was born the Book of Ecclesiastes, in which Solomon introduces himself as the preacher, sharing his reflections. He found that many of our pursuits, such as wealth and pleasure, are fleeting. "Vanity of vanities," he said, emphasizing that in the end, we all face the same cycles of life: birth, growth, and death. Solomon declared that there is a time for everything, noting that each phase of life has its purpose, from joy to pain. The king also reflected on wisdom and foolishness, recognizing that while wisdom is preferable, both paths lead to death. This realization humbled Solomon, who understood that we take nothing with us after death. A central theme of Ecclesiastes is the search for meaning in an often meaningless world. Solomon encouraged appreciation for the little things in life, like a shared meal or the beauty of nature. He concluded that true happiness lies not in possessions, but in living in the present and appreciating the simple moments. At the end of his reflections, Solomon summed it up: "Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man." He understood that living with purpose and faith is what truly brings meaning to life. The Book of Ecclesiastes remains a timeless guide, challenging us to think about our lives and find purpose beyond appearances. Solomon's words remind us of the fragility of life and the importance of living with wisdom and gratitude. The death of Solomon and the division of the kingdom. The story of Solomon, the king known for his wisdom and wealth, comes to a tragic end. After a prosperous reign, Solomon turns away from God, influenced by his many wives who brought idols and pagan practices to Israel. This causes divine sadness and a warning. God sends the prophet Ahijah to inform that, after Solomon's death, the kingdom will be divided. Solomon fears for the division and for the safety of his son, Rehoboam, who will inherit the throne. With the death of the king, Israel goes through a difficult transition. Rehoboam, instead of listening to the wise men who advise him to be kind, listens to young friends who suggest that he increase taxes. This decision leads to the revolt of the northern tribes, who proclaim Jeroboam as their new king, breaking with Rehoboam. Thus, Solomon's kingdom splits into two: the northern kingdom, called Israel, under Jeroboam, and the southern kingdom, called Judah, under Rehoboam. The division results in constant conflict and rivalry between the two nations, marking the beginning of a period of turmoil in Israel's history. Solomon's death and the subsequent division of the kingdom are a powerful reminder that true wisdom involves faithfulness to God. Solomon's once glorious legacy is now marred by disunity and power struggles, teaching us that ruling with justice and love is essential to lasting peace. Now that we know the tragic end of Solomon's story and the division of the kingdom, we want to hear your thoughts. What do you think could have been done differently to avoid this situation? Do you believe that Rehoboam's choices were influenced by his father's decisions? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss together how the lessons of the past can still resonate in our lives today. And so, folks, we have reached the end of Solomon's incredible journey. Isn't it fascinating to think about how he started out as a young prince, carrying the expectations of being a great king, and then became known for his wisdom and wealth? But as we've seen, Solomon's life was not all glory. He faced challenges, made difficult choices, and even lost his way at times. And this reminds us that, just like Solomon, we all face ups and downs. Sometimes we can feel overwhelmed by the decisions we have to make or the consequences of our actions. What's truly inspiring is that, even in the midst of hardship, Solomon showed us that we can always turn our eyes to wisdom and understanding. He teaches us that true wealth comes from knowing who we are and how to live meaningfully. So, what can we learn from him? That life is a journey full of lessons, and each choice we make can lead us to a more enlightened path. Let's remember to seek wisdom in our own lives, and who knows, we might just create a story as rich and impactful as Solomon's. If you were inspired by Solomon's story and want to continue this journey of wisdom and self-knowledge, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Here, we will explore more fascinating stories from the Bible and reflections that can illuminate your path. Turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos and join us in this search for the true richness of life. Let's grow together. Thank you for watching, and until next time.